I'm hyped to get into this card with y'all right now.
Absolutely. And let's do that. Let's talk about Wrestle Kingdom 18, Thursday, January 4th, the Tokyo Dome. And we'll go through all the matches here, Walker's thoughts. And of course, me and Jay News will tell Walker our predictions, who we think is going to come out as the winner. But we got first up here for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team titles. We got Clark Connors and Drilla Maloney, the Bullet Club War Dogs, defending against the former champions, the Super Junior Tag League winners, TJP and Francisco Akira. Catch 2-2. These two teams have been feuding since this past summer when Drilla Maloney turned his back on the United Empire to join the Bullet Club War Dogs. They dethroned Catch 2-2 for the Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Championships. They even beat them in the Super Junior Tag League, but it was Catch 2-2 who came out the victors. You talked about it earlier on the Road to Tokyo Dome shows. They had a coffin match, so you can really feel the heat between these two teams building up. Kind of tell us how it's been for you, kind of seeing it firsthand, how things have kind of revved up as we head into Wrestle Kingdom, and what is your thoughts on this match overall?
Well, you know, if the match happens, I'm incredibly excited to witness it live and in person. But I think that the big statement there is because if you remember at that Korakuen Hall event where that coffin match did happen, it was TJP the night before that laid down the challenge. And Akira was just along for the ride. He didn't really have a say in it. He said, TJ, I trust you, buddy. And they went in the next night and they lost. And not only did they lose, but some might consider it an embarrassing loss. Am I some? I might be. Francesco Akira and TJP were the ones throwing down that challenge, and they couldn't secure that victory. They haven't been able to defeat this combination of Drilla Maloney and Clark Connors at all in tag team competition, not in Super Junior Tag League, not in that coffin matchup, not in the Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Championship matchup where Catch 2-2 lost. So, you know, if this match happens, and that's a big if because we haven't seen TJP since being put in that coffin, and we saw Francesco Akira get choked out on that top rope with a dog collar for 3 minutes straight. So if we're looking at anything that's causing long-term damage, those are two situations, those are two people that I'd be shocked if I see them show up in the Tokyo Dome at all, and especially if I see them make their way to ringside expecting a match at Wrestle Kingdom. And it was Maloney and Connors, gentlemen, that said, hey, we're not going to be having a match to kick off Wrestle Kingdom at all. It's actually going to be a 60-minute time limit celebration of the greatest junior heavyweight tag team in the history of not only New Japan, but of professional wrestling. And I think that might be what we are subjected to if we don't see Akira and TJP, but I've been reaching out to Akira. I've been reaching out to TJP. I haven't been hearing from any of them, and it's got me worried.
Yeah, I would be worried as well. We are both huge fans of Catch 2-2. We're also big fans of the Bullet Club War Dogs. So, J News, who do you think is going to walk out with the junior heavyweight tag team titles?
You know, it's an interesting dynamic going into this match right now with everything that Walker just talked about. That coffin match was really, for me as a long-term New Japan fan, was really surprising because there's not a lot of gimmick matches in New Japan. So that's the first part of it, and then secondarily the way that they went out, right? Like Walker was saying, you know, Akira getting choked out by the dog collar, and TJP just randomly just throwing that challenge out there, and they lose. But a feeling of mine, being a long-term professional wrestling fan, I have a feeling that there's going to be some sort of change in Catch 2-2 before they walk into this match, and Catch 2-2 will have something to say about there being a contest to open up World Wrestle Kingdom 18, and I predict that Catch 2-2 will regain those IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Championships, because at the end of the day, the Bullet Club War Dogs, as good as they are, they might not expect what's coming for Wrestle Kingdom 18.
Maybe not.
If Akira and TJP can make it to the event, I'm gonna put my money on them. I think they've been the best junior heavyweight tag team in New Japan over the last 2 years, so they need that big win at Wrestle Kingdom to kind of finally avenge and put the Bullet Club War Dogs in their rear view mirror. Now, I know there is probably some people watching this interview and wondering why we didn't ask Walker a very important question about New Japan Pro Wrestling, because we were waiting to talk about this matchup here.
Exactly.
Because this includes the new New Japan Pro Wrestling President Ace himself, Hiroshi Tanahashi, challenging Zack Sabre Jr. for the NJPW World Television Championship. These two men were in a fantastic never open weight 6-man tag team championship matchup back at Power Struggle, where Tanahashi pinned Sabre Jr. to earn this opportunity. But a lot has changed in the past 2 months since then, as it was announced on pretty much Christmas Eve or Christmas weekend that Hiroshi Tanahashi has been appointed the new president of New Japan Pro Wrestling. Walker, I want to ask you kind of what was your reaction to that news? Did it catch you by surprise? And what do you think about the future of New Japan with Hiroshi Tanahashi leading the way?
So I want to start this off by saying I heard about the news when the boys did. He had announced to the locker room, or maybe privately told some people in the locker room, and it got around. I'm not too certain. I wasn't in the locker room at the time. But either way, there was conversation where Tanahashi had revealed, I am going to be announced tomorrow. This was the final day at Korakuen Hall. He said, I'm going to be announced tomorrow or the day after that I am the new president of New Japan Pro Wrestling. I had heard about it through the grapevine. The announcement came out. Now we can talk about it. Hiroshi Tanahashi has a history, and it's a history that I've known about even before doing my due diligence in the historical side of New Japan Pro Wrestling and being involved with the company. It's a history I was well aware of. One of the most historically selfless individuals that you will see in professional wrestling. It is shown within his work. It is shown within his demeanor as a person, but also as a professional wrestler. You know, he had been on the top, the absolute top, and he probably could have been on the top for a lot longer, but he was willing to pass the torch a little earlier than some felt that he might have had to secure the fact that someone would be able to carry on his legacy afterward. That somebody I'm referring to being Kazuchika Okada. And Hiroshi Tanahashi, man, I'm in my interactions with him, he's been very kind, very selfless, very generous, very honest as well. I cannot think of a better person, if they felt a changing in the guard was needed, to take the place as the head of New Japan Pro Wrestling, to take up the mantle. And I think this is a very positive thing for a lot of reasons. We haven't had a professional wrestler serve as president in New Japan since Tatsumi Fujinami. There's a lot of differences between Tatsumi Fujinami and Hiroshi Tanahashi, obviously, but one of them being Tanahashi's age. You know, he's not exactly 60 plus years old. He's not he's not close. Tanahashi still has plans of competing actively in the ring as president, even if it is on a bit more of a reserved basis. And we find ourselves with this New Japan World Television Championship match as a result. You know, when it comes to this matchup as well, I've had a lot of people talking to me and asking me about this. You know, Walker, well, when this championship was announced, it was supposed to be for the younger guys, and Hiroshi Tanahashi's done everything. And what do you say to that? What do you say to that? We've talked about Tanahashi being as selfless as he is, but reality is he is protective of New Japan Pro Wrestling, and we've seen that in countless occasions as well. He's protective of New Japan Pro Wrestling, especially now being the president of the entire company. And yeah, sure, championship is intended for younger talents. I have a full, confident belief that Hiroshi Tanahashi plans to walk into Wrestle Kingdom 18, walk away with the New Japan World Television Championship, and serve as the gatekeeper for that younger talent. For that younger talent that want to challenge for the original intention of that World Television Championship, and that being, similar to almost a U30 style championship, like, Tanahashi had won back when he was under the age of 30 years old. So, a bit of a roundabout poeticism there as well. But I have nothing negative to say about Tanahashi. There's locker room morale going through the roof as we speak. Super high energy going in to Wrestle Kingdom on every single side, from the New Japan World production staff, high-ranking office staff, and the locker room, and everyone else that's involved in the company. So I'm excited for it, and I'm excited to see Tanahashi take on Zack Sabre Jr. in 15 minutes.
Man, yeah, you kind of said it all, but like Tanahashi becoming president just seemed so right. Like this guy kind of really pulled this company out of the doldrum, saved the company in the 2000s. So for him to be the president 20 years later, it just seems like the most appropriate thing ever. I kind of feel like I'm a big basketball fan, so I would compare it to like if Magic Johnson and Larry Bird became the president of the NBA, because they saved that promotion like Tanahashi saved New Japan. Walker kind of talked about these two guys. They have a lot of history with one another, some classic technical wrestling battles, including in the G1 last year. This past year. J News, who do you think walks out with the World Television Championship?
Reality of the situation is that, for my bias, I want it to be Zach. But the reality of all this is, with President Ace being where he's at now, and Walker's point of if he does walk out of Wrestle Kingdom with that New Japan World TV Championship, he'll right the ship and he'll basically serve as gatekeeper. And that makes all the sense in the world. But at the same time, he does need to do a lot of other work, to not, let's say, to use a term, right the ship, more or less guided in a direction that he sees fit, in Tanahashi's direction, right? So I feel like Zack Sabre Jr. is still going to come out the winner here in this match. To SP3's point, to everybody's point, I think it's just a great thing to see the Ace as the president of New Japan Pro Wrestling. I think this is it was random for everyone, right? It was a surprise to everybody, but to now sit with it, it's been days. It was the Christmas gift to the world. And to know that Tana's going to be in that role, spearheading the company and hopefully guiding it in the right direction, because as SP3 said, in the 2000s, it was Tana or nobody. Right. So it's a great day for New Japan in that regard. We're going to get a fantastic match, I believe. I've been on this road with Tana for quite a while, and I know that I stake my criticism on him because of how the age, the knees, and everything else in between. But I've said this countless times before, and I will always say it. There is no wrestler in the business that I've ever witnessed that can draw that emotion from a crowd like Hiroshi Tanahashi. And I feel like we're gonna get more of that during the Zack Sabre Jr. match, and we're gonna get it in 15 minutes. So
well, that's something that I want to bring up real quick, because you said you followed the career of Hiroshi Tanahashi, and I've been going back and witnessing everything that I can on the new NJPW World app, and as much of the archives as I can find that are going up as we speak. But Tanahashi has a history of big matches. Those big matches, main events, tend to go pretty long. Yes. We're talking 60-minute time limits, sometimes no time limits for different things depending on the situation. And we know that Tanahashi can go well over 15 minutes, even at the state that he's at right now. But can he beat the clock? That's something we've seen Zack Sabre Jr. do throughout these 16 defenses that he's previously had. I think that's something that he's weaponized and utilized to his advantage. I think back to Lone Star Shootout with Mike Bailey going, I believe it might have been 14:57 or something incredibly close. They were within seconds of reaching the time limit. And Zack Sabre Jr. worked that into his advantage because he knew that Mike Bailey was going to start to panic, and Sabre Jr. wasn't the type to do that. All that being said, I'm not discrediting President Ace whatsoever, but we know he can go the length. Can he put all of those pieces into place to beat Zack Sabre Jr.? And if he does, can he do it under 15 minutes? I think we're going to have to find out.
It's basically been the near impossible. And like you said, the original kind of purpose of the World Television Championship was for the youth, the younger guys. But I think throughout the past year, Zack Sabre Jr. has made it the workhorse championship of New Japan Pro Wrestling, an historic reign that is up there on some of the greatest of all time. But all that I am saying, Walker convinced me. I'm going with the Ace. I'm going with President Ace New world television champion. I'm going with it. But two guys that could be pegged as future world television champions or pegged as the future of New Japan Pro Wrestling will have a special singles match on the card. You're going to have Yota Tsuji of LIJ going up against Yuya Uemura of Just Five Guys. These two men have faced a multitude of times. Their record against one another is, and I would call this an insane stat. This is an insane stat to me. 15, 10, and 22. They have faced over 47 times in one-on-one matches, with Tsuji holding the lead, 15 wins, 210, and 22 draws. But this is kind of the biggest match these two men will have against one another. Most of all, it's a huge test for Uemura, who has kind of been on the outside looking in with his fellow New Japan Dojo boys of Yota Tsuji, Shoto Umino, and Ren Narita, who were pegged as the Reiwa Three Musketeers in 2023, while Uemura was in Impact Wrestling. Now he's back, and he needs this win to kind of establish himself on the same level as the rest of the Three Musketeers. Walker, what do you think about this matchup? And what have you thought about Tsuji and Uemura in 2023 as they head into a very important 2024?
Tsuji, incredibly impressive, far beyond what I think a lot of people were going to give him credit for prior to his return from Excursion. And what a return from Excursion to talk about for Yota Tsuji. Quite the antithesis to the return that Yuya Uemura had. Yuya Uemura did not exactly return in that most high profile of setting. Yota Tsuji challenged for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. There's a stark difference between Tsuji and Uemura in that regard. But that might be one of the very few major differences between Tsuji and Uemura, because I think mentally they are a lot alike. Stylistically inside the ring, they are very different. And we've seen that more with Chris Charlton has akin Yuya Uemura to classic Ricky Steamboat, right? And yet you can see a lot of that energy within the style that Yuya Uemura takes on. Yota Tsuji, a little bit more flashy, a little bit more pomp and circumstance at time. And man, is that not representative of the main event we're going to get into later on in the evening? You know, a lot of comparisons to be made between Uemura and SANADA, Tsuji and Tetsuya Naito, LIJ, Just Five Guys. I have a theory that this matchup will influence the mentalities of both SANADA and Tetsuya Naito heading into that main event, because obviously SANADA is incredibly focused on the development of Just Five Guys and the talent within Just Five Guys. These leaders of these units are like head coaches, gentlemen. And, you know, they're player coaches in the sense where we are going to go out there and we're going to show you how it's done, but we expect you to follow suit. And that's why we also have to prove that we have what it takes, right? So, you know, that's just, we're going to talk about the main event in spades later on, but Uemura is looking to do right by SANADA, Tsuji looking to do right by Naito. But the key factor in this matchup, to me and many others, is that Yuya Uemura, this is his very first singles match since his return from Excursion. And Yota Tsuji may think that he knows Yuya Uemura after 50, 40-something singles encounters in the past. So you just mentioned that crazy statistic and win-loss draw record. But reality is, man, I mean, Yuya Uemura has developed. He has changed. He has adopted all these different influences. I witnessed Yuya Uemura come through the Texas independent wrestling scene. I didn't get to meet him at that time until I ended up meeting him during my onboarding with New Japan Pro Wrestling. But I witnessed him in action. I witnessed him in action in the Deadlock Pro Wrestling Carolina Classic. I witnessed Yuya Uemura all across the United States do what he does, go into Impact alongside Joe Hendry, do his thing there. You think he hasn't learned different tricks of the trade from these high-class, high-caliber athletes he's stepped in the ring with outside of Japan? You think he's not going to take that stuff back to a singles encounter? And let's be honest, I know these two have been in the ring with one another since Yuya Uemura's return in tag team action, but what type of athlete would Yuya Uemura be to show his cards in tag action that early on when he knows he wants Yota Tsuji in singles competition? It's something that Tsuji, he was adamantly denying. He said, I don't need to wrestle you. There's no need for us to wrestle. A lot of people were saying Yota Tsuji and Yuya Uemura on Wrestle Kingdom 18 would be incredible, and Tsuji had no interest in it, which what type of mentality does Yota Tsuji have going in to feel that he has the right to deny wanting a Wrestle Kingdom matchup? It's almost insulting to Yuya Uemura. Like, yeah, sure, I'd love to wrestle on Wrestle Kingdom, but not against that guy. You know, to deny the stage because of the person that he's competing against. All that being said, of course, last Korakuen Hall event of the year, last New Japan event of the year, Yuya Uemura got that shock victory that might have reinstilled a lot of confidence going in. The challenge was laid out. Yuya Uemura, Yota Tsuji, Wrestle Kingdom 18. I got to tell you, I'm not giving a lot of predictions in this one, but I think no one has more to prove than Yuya Uemura, especially in his first singles competition. And Uemura has got to be my pick for this.
Uemura is one of Jay News' favorites as well. So, Jay News, who's your pick for Uemura versus Tsuji?
Walker, just to give you a quick little bit of background, those boys from the Noge Dojo, that class, they have a place in my heart. That pandemic time of New Japan Pro Wrestling, Yuya, Yota Tsuji, Red Narita, Shota Umino, Gabriel Kidd, for all intents and purposes, those young men all have a special place in my heart. So I'll say this, man. I'll say this because this is real. I expect this match to steal the show. This is my prediction for this match. These two young men know what's on the line. They understand the feeling right now that's going into Wrestle Kingdom and this card. They have to step up. They don't have a choice at this point. You know what I'm saying? That's my feel, just because of the stars that are leaving due to contracts or whatever, going to other companies and all and whatnot. They got to step up, and I feel like they will. I watched all 49 of those matches. Those young lion, I was there for every single one, and their best matches were draws. And it's just one of those things to know where they are now in comparison to where they were then. And it's like, and I always said in the back of my head, I always had that thought of, let me see more. And now we're in a place where we're going to see more. And for me, I don't really care who wins. I think the fans win in this estimation. I just want them to steal the show. But if I got to go with a prediction, Yoda's got time, I think, because he got top billing. Like Walker said, he walked in, he got an IWGP World Heavyweight Championship match his first time back. I think Yuya Uemura would serve him best to get a win here, because they've got years to go at the end of the day. And if anything, if they want to give the New Japan Cup to Yota Tsuji or whatever the case is, they got time, to do all that. But I think a win for Yuya Uemura here, from a sentimental standpoint, would be a very, very cool and big deal. So if I'm going with any pick, it'll be Yuya Uemura.
So currently, I've been watching on Disney Plus the new Marvel series, What If?
What If? Okay.
Yeah, it's been really good. Now in my head, I've also been watching the New Japan What If Tsuji would have beat SANADA at Dominion.
Oh, here we go.
I still think about it to this day. Yep. To this day, what if Tsuji had beaten SANADA? That is why I'm gonna go with Tsuji to pick up the victory, because I feel if anyone has the skill, the talent, the connection with the fans to be immediately thrusted into a main event spot out of the young guys in New Japan, it's Yota Tsuji. And 2024 is going to be such an important year for that I think Tsuji needs this win to kind of propel him into that. But can't go wrong either way.
Well, I got to say, if there's one piece of advice that I would give to both of these men, this goes for both of them. There's no bias being shown here. You have to remember those young lion days, those multiple draws, way too many draws that we with Yota Tsuji and Yuya Uemura. I think that the ultimate insult, as we have seen before in New Japan Pro Wrestling, is the utilization of those Young Lion specific maneuvers for defeat.
Right.
We saw Yota Tsuji and Yuya Uemura throughout the past few months trading Boston Crabs back and forth. I think that is the #1 thing I would try and find a defense for, because I know both of these men are not only going to be looking to go in and hurt each other, not going to be looking into just walk away with the victory, but it's also to do a step above that and embarrass their opponent. And it's no hard feelings, but maybe there's a little bit of hard feelings there by the end of it. That would be my one piece of advice to Uemura and Tsuji coming up in this matchup, but I can't wait for it. I completely agree, Jay News, that this one's going to be a show stealer, whether you expect it or not.
This is the one match on the card that I'm like, I would not be surprised if it's the main event of next year's Wrestle Kingdom, because these two guys are the future. Very interesting one for us to talk about next, because if Walker was on the card for any important moment in the World Tag League, it involved these individuals, because it was in World Tag League that Red Narita turned heel, betraying Shota Umino and joining up with Evil and House of Torture. During World Tag League as well, House of Torture gained the ire of Team Noah of Kaito Kiyomiya and Ryohei Uyoa, and Kiyomiya and Umino kind of made a connection, made an alliance due to their mutual hatred of House of Torture. So one of the aces of Noah, Kaito Kiyomiya, will team up with a future ace of New Japan Pro Wrestling, Shota Umino, to versus House of Torture's Evil and Ren Narita. Walker, you have not made it any type of secret. You do not enjoy what House of Torture always brings in terms of the shenanigans that they bring and the tactics that they use. And you seemed very upset with Ren Narita's decision to join up with them. So kind of looking back on World Tag League and being a part of that call, how do you look back on it going into this matchup coming up at Wrestle Kingdom?
It was disappointing for a lot of reasons to see Ren Narita do what he did at World Tag League, turning on Shota Umino. You know, we saw, I don't know if you guys witnessed or if fans of this podcast witnessed, but the fireside chat between Shota Umino and Ren Narita, where they spoke for 20, 30, 40 minutes, whatever it was. It could have been a lifetime. I enjoyed watching Shota Umino and Ren Narita finally on the same page after such a long time of just kind of this consistent back and forth, because they know those comparisons are always going to be made between the two due to being lumped in with that Reiwa 3 Musketeers. That branding is always going to keep those men connected one way or another. Then for this to happen at World Tag League, and we saw the subsequent meltdown from Shota Umino on social media after the exodus of Umino and Narita from the World Tag League standings and keeping them out of the semis and the finals. You know, I've made it very apparent that I'm not a big House of Torture guy, and I don't think it's hard to understand why. I see them as a cult. I see them as a group of individuals that do exactly what cultists do, and it's preying on the weak. They prey on those who are down and out on their luck. And it wasn't Ren Narita who was as much down and out on his luck as it was Shota Umino. I think Umino took that loss at World Tag League way, way harder than Narita did, but they managed to do 2-1, 2 birds in one stone. They scooped up one of the most talented young athletes in New Japan Pro Wrestling and converted them on their side, and emotionally damaged, possibly beyond repair, well, as you referred to, a future ace in New Japan Pro Wrestling. But is that still the case now? Because I think a lot of people would have said that if Shota Umino and Ren Narita would have gone on to accomplish their plan, which that plan they laid out in that fireside chat was incredibly, I don't want to say simple, it was easier said than done, but it was streamlined. World Tag League victory, IWGP Tag Team Championship reign, defend against Okada and Tanahashi, and then main event 2025 Wrestle Kingdom. Somehow, no matter which side the championship was on in the beginning, for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. That was the timeline they had laid out. That's what they had hoped for. And if things had gone that way, I think we'd be well on our way to still considering Shota Umino one of the future aces, or potentially the ace at that point of New Japan Pro Wrestling. Reality is, though, Umino's a different guy since then. We've seen a huge mental transformation, an emotional difference. And sometimes it has come in the ways of emotional overreaction. Sometimes it has come in the ways of just complete breakdown and distress. I think that this is affecting Shota Umino mentally much more than a lot of people are seeing, and also much more than he's willing to admit. And that's saying a lot considering how public he was with that emotional distress following World Tag League, right? But you know, that's Shota Umino and Ren Narita. I think Ren Narita is going to get exactly what's coming to him, and that's why Shota Umino wanted this matchup. I'm sure that if Umino had it his way, it wouldn't exactly be a tag team affair. It would be a singles match, but Narita tried to do everything in his power to make sure that wasn't going to happen, and he was successful in that. I'm interested in seeing the dynamic between Kaito Kiyomiya and Evil, which we've seen play out a little bit in World Tag League. We're seeing it over on the Pro Wrestling Noah side. I know that those two and really everyone here is going to be involved on that January 2nd Pro Wrestling Noah event coming up at Ariake Arena, and that's something to keep your eye on as well. But this is the first Wrestle Kingdom for Kaito Kiyomiya, someone who a lot of people have been clamoring to see more so under the New Japan Pro Wrestling banner. And this could be the beginning of something big for Kiyomiya, depending on how this matchup goes. And if we continue to see him more going throughout 2024, bouncing between Pro Wrestling Noah and New Japan, staying in New Japan Pro Wrestling, I know I wouldn't have a problem with that whatsoever. A lot of little aspects and details going into this matchup, but it's going to be a good one because you know that Shota Umino is finally going to be able to get his hands on Ren Narita. Nowhere for Ren Narita to run. Even if Kaito Kiyomiya and Evil have to be in opposite corners, they're going to end up making it happen.
So I wanted to ask you before I ask Jay News his prediction. Taking aside your disdain for House of Torture, do you think that this move for Narita was needed? Because in a lot of the fans' eyes, if their Three Musketeers were ranked, Narita would have been third to a lot of people. But him doing this whole portrayal and showing a little bit more personality might be the thing that he needs to kind of change that ranking. What do you think about that?
I think that all throughout World Tag League, there was one constant, and that was Shota Umino's involvement in every single ending of their blockade competition. Whether it was Shota Umino looking up at the lights by the end of the night or being the one with his hand raised in victory, it almost felt like Ren Narita was an afterthought. You have to think that Ren Narita felt that every single night, one way or another, almost like he didn't matter alongside Shota Umino. And to some people, he honestly didn't. There are a lot of people that were much more invested in one half of that equation, and it was Shota Umino that they were more focused on. So from Ren Narita's perspective, he claimed at one point that this is something that was always in the works. I don't know if I truly believe that, if I'm honest with you, but you can only take a man at his word, despite that word not being worth much based off of that betrayal. But yeah, I think it's hard to put myself in the mind of someone so dark and someone so ruthless as to betray a friend that way. But if I were to do so, I guess I can understand logically how it would be good for Ren Narita to make this move. It's definitely not a lateral move whatsoever. There is progression that we've seen out of the little bits and pieces that we've seen of Ren Narita since then. A lot of those House of Torture tactics are now going to be in use. And as much as I might have a lot of negativity on those tactics, they've been successful in the past. They've won House of Torture championship after championship, whether it's the tag team, the Never Openweight 6-man tag team championships, whether it's been KOPW with Show this year, Yoshinobu Kanemaru being incredibly successful, even more so since his entrance into House of Torture. So I think that despite how I might want it, or how I hope things go, I think Ren Narita is set to have a big 2024 one way or another.
I agree with that. J News, I know you're not a fan of House of Torture, so are you picking them at Wrestle Kingdom, or do you think Kaito and Shota will win?
Walker, if you're not aware, I'll let you know right now, there's a deep-seated hatred for the House of Torture. on my side, and it's got nothing to do with the shenanigans. It's just got more to do with the fact that I'm tired of it. I'm just tired of it all. I can't respect any of it at the end of the day. I'll say this to comment on something that SP3 had said. Was this necessary for Red Narita? Was this something that he needed in order to show more of that personality in him? Yes, it was needed, but I just felt like it was needed without the House of Torture. It's just one of those things that always comes into my mind, because Ren Narita was put into this pretty little package where he's now the younger version of Shibata, right? That's always been the market. But at the end of the day, after the betrayal, after Shooter's breakdown and everything else in between, he got all dark, the hair in front of the eye, everything else in between. The feel for me now is heel Chono for Ren Narita. And it's one of those things, if people don't know where I'm going with this, it's fine. There's archives full of Chono matches. Heel Chono was the best Chono. Masahiro Chono, that is. And if Narita is going in that particular direction from a personality and from a wrestling standpoint, I'm all for it. As I said before, House of Torture, not necessary. As for this match, Kaito Kiyomiya is a key piece here. Something that Walker said, can we see Kaito Kiyomiya join New Japan Pro Wrestling in 2024? Who knows? Who's to say, as those say out there? But that would be very welcome, because I think the kid is a star at the end of the day. And him being on the bigger platform that is New Japan Pro Wrestling would be something that is very welcome, even though there is now a big time unionization movement between all the companies in Japan. But having Kaito officially with New Japan, I think would be a cool thing to see. As for the match here, I more House of Torture shenanigans. That's all I can predict. As for who gets to win, I don't know where the better story is, right? Do we continue to mess with Shooter's mental health, or do we give the faces here, the good guys, the one up at the biggest event of the year? I don't know where to go, but I am a Shooter fan. I want Kaito to be on the New Japan side, so I'm going to roll with the guys in this match. Hopefully, Evil gets taken out early, because I can't bear Evil anymore. And hopefully Ren Narita gets in the ring, because the one thing that got me so much about World Tag League, when Ren Narita turned his back on Shooter and he just sat in that chair outside of the ring, I was like, that's all you needed to see. I was like, but you didn't need House of Torture for that. You just could have done it, and you could have just walked on that. But we got something else. But one for the good guys on my side here. I'm going for Shooter and Kaito Kiyomiya to win this match.
Through this conversation, I have now realized that Ren Narita needs to win this match, so I am going with the House of Torture against my better judgment.
Sure. Hey, listen, I can say one thing. I think that a lot of things would be better off without House of Torture. And I think that, New Japan Pro Wrestling might be better off without House of Torture. And so it made me laugh. You saying, I hope Evil's taken out early, because you know how House of Torture works. Evil gets taken out early, and somehow Dick Togo, Yoshinobu Kanemaru, and Sho come out and make their way involved as well. So Evil being taken out one way or another in the beginning of the match, or whether he stays throughout at all, same thing's going to end up happening. And that's the thing with House of Torture, and that Shota Umino and Kaito Kiyomiya need to be strategizing for and game planning for, is it's the same MO. It is the same strategy over and over and over. You have to have people on your side to really be able to combat that. And I think that's what people in New Japan Pro Wrestling are starting to realize. The question that I have, Shota Umino couldn't even trust the man that he considered to be his best friend. He stabbed him in the back at World Tag League. How much trust do you think he really has for anyone right now, let alone Kaito Kiyomiya? I'm just saying, I think that we're dealing with a severely mentally and emotionally damaged Shota Umino. It's going to change the way that he approaches this matchup going into Wrestle Kingdom.
Making me look forward to it even more. One of the big title matches at Wrestle Kingdom will be for the Never Openweight Championship. Shingo Takagi going one-on-one with Tama Tonga. These two men went one-on-one in the G1 Climax tournament, going to a 20-minute time limit draw. From there, they face for the Never Openweight Championship in Las Vegas at Fighting Spirit Unleashed, where Shingo defeated Tama Tonga to become the Never Openweight Champion. He successfully defended the title against Trent Beretta at Lone Star Shootout, and it was Tama who came out to make the challenge for Wrestle Kingdom. So who wins this third big matchup between Tama and Shingo here? I don't know. I don't know who's going to walk out with the champion quite yet, but what do you think about this matchup of two very popular baby faces at Wrestle Kingdom?
Japan loves Tama Tonga. There's no doubt about it. Japan loves Shingo Takagi, and I'm not sure who they may love even more. They've had more time recently with Shingo Takagi. The last time that we saw Tama Tonga in Japan, it would have been a good month or so ago. Meanwhile, Shingo Takagi, recently competing on the Korakuen Hall events. Chris Charlton has talked about at length on the New Japan broadcast on the English side how much going into championship matches, it really does mean having that crowd behind you, having that energy behind you. I think this is going to be, maybe beside the main event, one of the most split crowd matches that we have. In regard to saying that, it was Tama Tonga, like you mentioned, going in at Fighting Spirit Unleashed. He laid down the challenge at Royal Quest a few weeks before, comes in saying, hey, I want you and I want you in Las Vegas. Well, he got him, and he got him a little too much because Shingo Takagi manages to get the victory, wins his third Never Openweight Championship. And one of the things that Veda Scott and I talked about back at Fighting Spirit Unleashed is the difficulty of overcoming the first championship defense when it comes to title matches. Veda Scott has faced that herself in professional wrestling as an athlete. I myself, not so much, but I've witnessed it from the sidelines. And so, Tama Tonga couldn't overcome that. Shingo Takagi has. He's managed to defeat Trent Beretta in his first defense at Lone Star Shootout, and what a match that was, and a challenge that Trent Beretta put up to Shingo Takagi, and then Tama Tonga comes right out and says, hey, you and I, Wrestle Kingdom 18. Tama Tonga feels that he has something to avenge. Shingo Takagi has something to defend. It is that simple. There is respect between these two, but it is purely about the Never Openweight title by the end of this one. So I think Shingo Takagi, I think he has a lot of momentum going in, especially the recent victories at the Korakuen Hall events. I guess the question that I want to pose to you, gentlemen, we saw Shingo Takagi at these events leading up to New Japan Pro Wrestling competing in World Tag League. We didn't see Tama Tonga doing the same thing because he took the strategy of foregoing those matches, staying at home, training, keeping himself out of the ring, staying inside the training ring, but keeping himself outside of competition because it's less time for Shingo Takagi to really go and scout him at his current state. So the question I want to pose to both of you, I'd love to hear your answer to this, is which side do you think is more beneficial? Do you think it's smarter to keep yourself out of the ring but continue to train so your opponent can't scout you out, or should you be in there every single night of the week doing what you do?
That's a very interesting question. For me, I think in the wrestling business, it's better to always get those reps. I feel like when the bell rings for a big time matchup, you just will instantly get into that mindset, and your body will be ready for the torture that you're gonna put throughout the championship matchup. Whereas if you take some time out of the ring, and yeah, you're still training, it's not the same as actually being in a matchup. And like you said, sometimes the throwaway matchup, as the boys call it, it will help them for the big time championship matchup. So I think that I will take Shingo's path to this championship matchup over Tama's.
And just to play devil's advocate here, Tama Tonga, friend of the channel. I would say that if he is putting in the work in silence, he's working on something new. He's adding a couple of different ripples to his tide, if you may. So it might just be something completely different than what Shingo Takagi is used to with Tama Tonga coming into this match. So I'll give Tama the element of surprise here. But Walker, if you weren't aware, Shingo Takagi is probably my favorite IWGP World Heavyweight Champion of all time. So I'll tell you that out front, and I will always choose him to win any match, no matter what the circumstance. So I feel like Tama's going to come in with a couple of new wrinkles. He's going to come in with a different game plan. Being now that he's not being scouted at all, he hasn't been working those matches. He's going to have a little bit of an element of surprise towards Shingo. So it's going to be a differently worked match. But I still feel that the high level of wrestling IQ, adaptability, and innovation that Shingo Takagi brings to the wrestling ring will suit him well, and he will regain or retain his never openweight championship in this Wrestle Kingdom match.
Now, Jay News, there's a lot of similarities between you and I, because Shingo Takagi has my favorite look with the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, and it just fit him so well. He also has had some of my favorite matches I've been able to go back and watch for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. So if there's anyone I might be going with, as unbiased as I'll be during the broadcast, Shingo Takagi, always going to be a favorite. But gentlemen, the reason I posed that question earlier on about which strategy you might personally prefer between these two men is because there's no right or wrong answer. We have seen the strategy Tama Tonga is taking be incredibly successful for him and for many others in the past. We've seen the same strategy that Shingo Takagi is taking be successful for him and many others as well when it comes to championship competition, specifically at the Tokyo Dome, specifically at Wrestle Kingdom on the biggest stage in pro wrestling. So overall, you know, I bring this up just to say I know a lot of people are going to throw criticism all over the board to these two different strategies for Tama and Shingo, but I think we're going to find out whose was more effective when it comes to this 60-minute time limit match for the never open weight title. And I think if there's anyone I had to go with on it, it would have to be Shingo.
Shingo is a good bet. I'm going to make it unanimous and go for Shingo. Despite Tama Tonga being a close friend, I will not take the bribe, and I will go with Shingo.
I mean, keep in mind, last year it was Wrestle Kingdom 17 where Tama Tonga found himself on the successful end of the never open weight championship match against Carl Anderson. So, you know, it's not to say that Tama Tonga doesn't have the track record of being successful, and he might be trying to make it the 2-peat this year and then the 3-peat the next with the retaining of the never open weight title. But we're going to have to find out.
But Shingo's real key to this is that he is not a Bullet Club member, because every single person Tama Tonga has won a never open weight championship from has been a Bullet Club member. Evil, Carl Anderson, and David Finlay. We got this one where I know Walker has a very strong connection to this matchup because he was on the call for the World Tag League final, which had Hiroki Goto and Yoshihashi Bishamon defeating the Gorillas of Destiny, Hikuleo, and El Phantasmo in the finals. 40 minutes, a 40-minute banger, as ELP told me in our interview. And now we get part 3 of this trilogy for both the IWGP World Tag Team Championships and the Strong Openweight Tag Team titles. It will be the GOD versus Bishamon. Walker, how was it being on the call for such an epic final of a tournament and seeing these two teams kind of leave it all in the ring in the World Tag League final, and then immediately after finding out they will once again have a showdown in the Tokyo Dome?
Well, you know, it was fantastic. I wish I could have been there live in Kumamoto. That was the live remote English coverage that we provided, myself and Chris Charlton, over Zoom. I can't believe that technology exists. But
can I just say,
sure,
that was the best that they ever sounded doing commentary on Zoom.
Really?
Like, it sounded seamless, where I legitimately was debating if y'all were like close to the arena, like in the next building over, because y'all sounded like y'all were there.
Well, that's good. It's a very good thing then. I know there have been some investments made on the production end for New Japan and New Japan World, and I'm happy to see that those are paying off and they're being recognized. So thank you for that.
Thank you for confirming that for me, Walker. I've been talking about this for years.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. The reality is, you want to talk about history. History made multiple times over for Bishamon, coming in to competing in the longest match in the history of World Tag League and the longest final that we have seen thus far. It's one and the same. So there's two things there. Yoshihashi and Hiroki Goto picking up the victory. And not only that, the first time ever that the tag team champions of the IWGP Variety have won World Tag League. The first time ever that we have seen it put into practice and play, that they challenge their opponents for the Dome. And not only that, but the twist and the cherry on top to me, the three-peat for Hiroki Goto, for Yoshihashi. For Hiroki Goto, he's a 5-time winner of World Tag League now. Once alongside Katsuyori Shibata, once alongside the aforementioned Carl Anderson. And now the cherry on top of that, you're adding a little extra whipped cream. The strong open weight tag team championships that are no strangers to Bishamon, despite their short reign with them. They want to hold them for the second time. They said, we want to take you to the limit again, but we want your championship on the line as well. And I think that it's a smart move from Yoshihashi. I think it's a smart move from Hiroki Goto. You get the opportunity to challenge your opponents for Wrestle Kingdom. And there's a couple different strategies you'd think about going into this. Some might say, well, you know, a lesser team would go in and challenge the weakest team, the team that performed the worst in World Tag League this year, because they want an easy match at the Tokyo Dome. Some might say that the reigning champions and World Tag League winners would go in and say, not have a match whatsoever, say, we're taking the night off, we'll be backstage eating catering, and we'll take the payday, you know? And that's not what we're getting here. Because we're talking about two warriors. We're talking about two fighters. We're talking about two men who just 1 year ago did something that I don't think a lot of people expected, and that was defeat FTR in an incredible matchup at Wrestle Kingdom 17 for the IWGP Tag Team Championships. And of course, you know, they lost them at a certain point, won them back, gained the strong openweight tag titles, lost those, want them back now. It all comes to fruition on this night for Yoshihashi and Hiroki Goto if they can get the job done. It was El Phantasmo and Hikuleo, I believe, who defeated Bishamon in the early goings of World Tag League in Block B competition. You know, they took 40 minutes in that main event. They have 60 minutes on the clock now. I've heard some people challenge El Phantasmo in the locker room to see if he could go even longer if he has to. I think that there's potential that this one is, if there's any match that I have absolutely no prediction for, it has to be this one, purely because of everything that's on the line here. We're talking history. We're talking two championships on the line in the same matchup. Both of these teams have had two successful defenses of their championships in their current reigns. If El Phantasmo and Hikuleo win the IWGP Tag Team Championships, they officially become the 100th, another piece of history, 100th reigning IWGP Tag Team Champions. I think that's a big thing on the mind of El Phantasmo and Hikuleo as well. Gentlemen, I'm curious to hear who you have for this one.
I had the honor to speak to El Phantasmo and Hikuleo, and that's all they really were focused on, is this big opportunity, this big matchup, because they want to become the 100th reigning IWGP Tag Team Champions. But most of all, they recognize the fact that Bishamon is the unquestionable faces of tag team wrestling in New Japan. And both of these guys have not gotten many opportunities on the Wrestle Kingdom main card. El Phantasmo's had 2 or 3 matches on the Wrestle Kingdom main card, and this is Hikuleo's first big match. And even for both men, this is probably the biggest match of their career. And like I said, I interviewed them. So yes, I'm biased. I'm going with El Phantasmo and Hikuleo to get away.
I like when you can admit it. That's what makes it acceptable. This is where we ride the lines of journalism. I think it's a fair pick. You know, El Phantasmo and Hikuleo have been really gelling well with one another. I think a point to bring up on this, though, is that we even have to say that about El Phantasmo and Hikuleo. We've seen them gel over this year. We don't have to say that about Yoshihashi and Hiroki Goto because we've seen it proven over a long period of time just how successful they are, just how in sync they are, whether it's inside the ring or outside the ring. These guys are finishing each other's sentences, and it's one of those things that I think is really going to give Yoshihashi and Hiroki Goto the leg up, especially knowing that, sure, it may be 1-1, but who got that more recent victory? Who took that more recent fall? You know, these are the things to keep in mind. I think Bishamon is a team that is typically dangerous in all situations, but more dangerous than ever at this current point.
And ELP made it clear in our interview that he's not too happy with how the story transpired with Bishamon winning the final. That's not the way they would have wanted to tell the story. But Jay News, who do you think walks out with all the tag team gold?
Oh man, you know, it's interesting. I was supposed to be a part of that interview with Hikuleo and ELP, and unfortunately I missed out. Wanted to meet those guys, but at this point in time, I'm going to ride the wave, the momentum wave, that is, because Bishamon won their last encounter. And at the end of the day, what I want to say is that Bishamon is my #1 tag team of 2023. SP3, you know that.
You were the one first place vote that they got in our tag team of the year voting, and that got them up to #4. So you did your job.
Hey man, it's all about the average, brother. The law of averages. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, I'm gonna go with Bishamon here, not because I have any sort of bias or hatred towards Hikuleo and ELP. As a matter of fact, I enjoy ELP's work a lot. I think that Hikuleo's gotten much better over the last calendar year in the ring with his psychology and just the fluidity of his of his athleticism in the ring, right? Because it takes some guys a certain amount of work and time to get used to that work rate, that style, and things of that nature. And I think he's adapted well. So props to Hikuleo on that end. ELP's he's a showstopper at the end of the day. So I see great things for him in his future as a singles competitor. But this tag team match here, Bishamon is riding that wave. They came off that win. They've been the best tag team in the business outside of FTR. So for me, they win here at Wrestle Kingdom 18. They retain their championships. As to what's going to happen afterwards, I have no idea. But that's going to be my prediction for the match.
Yeah, I got to say real quick, when it comes to Yoshihashi and Hiroki Goto, the first time I ever spoke with Kevin Kelly about Bishamon, and I gained really his insight into how he feels about Yoshihashi and Hiroki Goto. He was calling matches with Yoshihashi before he was teaming alongside Goto, and calling matches with Goto before Yoshihashi. And reality is, he made a very striking point that I think applies to both teams in this matchup. At one point, what Yoshihashi was lacking in his in-ring work, what he was lacking in his heart and his drive and his desire, Hiroki Goto was able to fill. And what Hiroki Goto could not find and did not have, Yoshihashi was able to complete. So it's like puzzle pieces. When it comes to El Phantasmo and Hikuleo, that is completely the case stylistically. If we're talking inside the ring, El Phantasmo has that speed and agility covered. He has that intense wherewithal covered. Hikuleo, he has that one thing that has been a detriment to El Phantasmo in the past, and that has been a substantial lack of size or potentially being outpowered by other competitors. So really, once again, like puzzle pieces, we're seeing these two teams of two different men. Everyone is gelling together in a way that, you know, it leads to this perfect storm of ultimate competition. There's no weak link here. And I think that's what makes this such a toss-up going into Wrestle Kingdom.
Definitely does. And I love the comparison between the two teams as well. Now, two guys that have been compared to one another since the start of their careers and have faced on a multitude of times, including at Wrestle Kingdom for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship. It's going to be Hiromu Takahashi defending against one of his greatest rivals, El Desperado. These two men have clashed on many occasions, including, in my opinion, the greatest Best of Super Junior final of all time back in in 2020, but it was in 2021 that Desperado defeated Hiromu, retaining the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship. Hiromu has been on an historic, legendary reign that started at last year's Wrestle Kingdom in a four-way with Despy and Master Wato, as well as Taiji Ishimori. He's defended against all of those individuals in singles competition, but not El Desperado quite yet. That gets done at Wrestle Kingdom. The history between these guys is well documented. Their history in one-on-one matches, it's completely even. 3-3-1. So 3 wins for Hiromu, 3 wins for Despy, 1 draw. Walker, what do you think about this one, and how has been the preparation for this match that has so much history involved in it from before your time in New Japan, and how have you been getting ready for this bout?
I think that a lot of people write off matches like this where these competitors have faced off time in and time out as we're going to see the same thing as we've seen in the past. I can guarantee you this matchup is going to be one of the most different on the entire Wrestle Kingdom card going in, because of the differences in Hiromu Takahashi and El Desperado than you might have seen years ago. These are completely different people. The COVID-19 pandemic changed everyone, changed everything. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse off. But Hiromu Takahashi and El Desperado are walking and competing for that Junior Heavyweight Championship. You mentioned it before, SP3. It is Hiromu who is on a warpath to try and take out everyone from that four-way. Every single person. And he's done Master Wato. He took on Taiji Ishimori at Power Struggle successfully. That's why he feels he deserves to wear the championship around his waist now. There's one person that he has not defeated since that matchup specifically, and I'm excited that we're going to be getting to see this rematch here with El Desperado. When I say that people are writing off Despe and Hiromu Takahashi as a matchup, I don't think that people are undervaluing how competitive or how good of a match it may be. But the reality is, if you have competed in one match more since the last time you stepped in the ring with somebody else, whether it be an 8-man tag team match, singles competition, Rochambeau, whatever it is, you have improved as an athlete in some way. You've learned something else. You've seen something different. You've countered something in a way that you never have before. That puts you just a step above, just an inch above what your opponent is going to be expecting you to be at. And I think that El Desperado has learned a lot over the past year. I think that El Desperado has had a hell of a year. I think that his run in Super Junior Tag League was an incredibly interesting one alongside Master Wato. I think despite how Despe might feel about Wato, he did invite him down to accompany him at Wrestle Kingdom 18 for this matchup. So who's to know if that's going to play a factor into the momentum Desperado has going in. Desperado recently in an interview stated that he's jealous of the reign that Hiromu Takahashi has had, which is shocking to hear considering we're talking about a guy in Desperado who never exactly ever stated he wanted to be the ace of the junior division. He never said that he wanted to be the top guy. In fact, he resented that idea and donned the black hat. And, you know, I think that is, we're seeing these philosophical changes in Desperado. We're seeing these differences in Desperado as a competitor. I think that that is something that Hiromu's not expecting. And I think it's going to be something that catches him off guard coming up at Wrestle Kingdom 18.
That's an excellent point about the status of the ace of the promotion as far as the junior division, because in a lot of people's mind, it's been unquestionably Hiromu. But despite Hiromu's unwilling kind of popularity and connection with the audience, in a lot of ways, it feels like Hiromu is the New Japan choice of junior ace and the fans' choice is El Desperado, because his popularity has gone through the roof since the pandemic and especially over the last 2 years. So yeah, it's very interesting that this is not only a battle for the title, it seems like it's also a battle for that spot as ace. News, I know you are a big fan of El Desperado. El Desperado, we are captains of the El Desperado fan club here, but Hiromu Takahashi is my favorite junior heavyweight of all time. Who do you think is going to walk out with the junior heavyweight championship?
I don't know. This is the toss-up one for me. That Super Junior final during the pandemic was a match that changed the landscape for me for New Japan's junior division and how it can tell a story in the ring that captivates not only just the fans that are at the show, but the folks watching at home. Like, I was emotionally spent by the end of that match. And it was the first time in a long time where I had been. And I was like, juniors did this? Hiromu was on to something. He wants to main event one of these Wrestle Kingdoms. He wants to main event one of these shows. They're on to something. With that being said, I don't know. I can't call it, man. I really, really can't call it. I know we're gonna get a terrific matchup. We're gonna get something that we're gonna get spots that we've seen before. We're gonna get things that we haven't seen before. We might just get a strong style match out of the juniors, if for all intents and purposes here, to just to switch it up a bit. You know, Despy having his hardcore 2023 as he has been, you know, so he's been riding that wave. And Hiromu just trying to beat that defense streak, right? He's trying to get to that 11, I think is the number. So he would have to beat Despy at Wrestle Kingdom 18. I just don't know if he can with what Despy has learned in this calendar year, as Walker put it. You know, all the different styles of matches, all the different kinds of matches, the different competitors that he's faced. I think his newfound friendship with Jun Kasai has only been a positive at the end of the day to Despy and things of that nature. Just his I would say his treatment of Master Wato has been something to watch, because everyone's always kind of sunned Master Wato. He's always been an afterthought, and Despy's really never necessarily liked him much, but there's a respect level there. That's like, all right, kid, you did it. You won the junior, you won the freaking best of Super Juniors. But you know, I still have to compete against you. But there's a level of respect there. So I'm not too sure if this match is going to end cleanly, if you understand what I'm saying. There are stories to be told, and I think that would be an interesting story to tell, because for all intents and purposes, Master Wato, I'm not too sure how over he is in Japan with the fan base. But from our end here in the States, or at least me speaking for myself, there is sort of I'm not sure where he's going type feel, you know? So, and I understand he's attached to Hontai and things of that nature, whatever the case is. So, Hontai, sorry. So I don't know. I feel that there needs to be a change in Wato, and if he finds himself at ringside for this match, sticky hands like the grab is all I have to say. So, you know, I think that Hiromu doesn't need the help, but from a story perspective, I think that would be cool to see, and then it would drive a story for the rest of the year 2024. Because Wato hasn't had a blood feud, and Desperado's the man to give it to anybody. So at the end of the day, I think, you know, just thriving off of that. I'm just here speculating, folks. I don't know what the hell's gonna happen. I don't book it. I'm not Gato.
Yeah, I just asked you about Wrestle Kingdom. Why are you talking about 2024 and stuff?
Look, it's because of what Walker mentioned, right? And I was like, he invited Wato to come down to ringside with him. And I was like, wait a minute, what? Oh, okay. We got a story brewing here. But no, for Wrestle Kingdom 18, with what I just said, yeah, man, Hiromu wins at the end of the day, right? He needs to get to that 11. I don't know if that gets him all the way up to the New Japan Cup, if we're going to events wise, from 11 time defense type thing, for Hiromu. But yeah, Hiromu wins. If I got a bet, which I don't, but Hiromu wins. It should be a spectacular match, but I feel there will be more of a story thread created in this match for the future of 2024. That's my thing.
I need Hiromu to hit this defense record only because I feel like there is really nothing stopping him from transitioning into the heavyweight scene. Because I've always felt, despite his small stature, his small size, Hiromu Takahashi has the personality of a main event heavyweight in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And he is one of the most popular guys. And I feel after he gets this defense record, there's literally nothing for him to do in the junior heavyweight. You've won the Best of Super Juniors more times than anyone. You've won the junior heavyweight championship. You set the defense record. It's time for you to move on up. And even it could be a small move up to the never open weight scene. I love seeing Hiromu mix it up with your Tomohiro Ishii's, with your Shingo Takagi's, with your Kashiko Okadas. So give me that, but I say Hiromu wins this one.
You know, I find it interesting that you say that, because I've heard some people make similar claims, not exactly about the he's done everything aspect, but the potential for heavyweight status for El Desperado as well. Yeah. I think that that's something that a lot of people would like to see. I know that that's something that I would like to see personally, and it's not as much of a I think he's better suited in a heavyweight division or anything like that. I think I love what's happening right now, but the reality is El Desperado versus anyone in the heavyweight division for a championship, that's a money match. Hiromu Takahashi versus anyone for the World Heavyweight Championship. Imagine Naito wins and there's that inner turmoil potentially. Imagine that SANADA wins and, well, one LIJ member couldn't get it done, but I got this. You know, there's a lot that could possibly happen with both of these men being heavyweights, but we're gonna put a pin in that right now, because junior heavyweight championships on the line. Someone's a junior heavyweight by the end of this one.
Exactly, going into the rest of 2024. But there's going to be a big change, Walker J. News, in 2024 in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And we could talk about a bunch of it in this one matchup here. IWGP Global Heavyweight Championship. They will crown an inaugural champion on January 4th as the former IWGP United States United Kingdom champion Will Ospreay will face AEW's Jon Moxley and the leader of the Bullet Club, David Finlay. It looked after Power Struggle that we were heading to an Ospreay Moxley 2 after their controversial finish back at Windy City Riot in 2022, where Ospreay seemingly kicked out of the paradigm shift, but the referee counted the 1, 2, 3. It's been an unclosed book in regards to these two, and it looked like we were going to get the rematch at Wrestle Kingdom before David Finlay inserted himself into their business, laying out Mox, laying out Ospreay, and then destroying the IWGP United States and United Kingdom championships, leading to Ospreay suggesting to New Japan that they introduce a new championship, and we have the IWGP Global Heavyweight Championship. Before we get into this matchup, I know you mentioned it earlier about the upcoming departure of Will Ospreay from New Japan Pro Wrestling. In many people's eyes, he has been the MVP of New Japan over the last 2-3 years or so. How much of a kind of a void is going to be having to be filled in New Japan Pro Wrestling with the departure of Will Ospreay? And if there is any kind of individuals that you see that are currently on the roster who can step up and fill that void, who do you think it would be, Walker?
Well, you know, there's definitely going to be a void felt, whether it's inadvertently or not, with the absence of Will Ospreay. The reason why is because, plain and simple, Will Ospreay is, if he's not one of it, he is the best professional wrestler going in the world today. And that has been something that we've talked about at length on the broadcast, that many do believe Will Ospreay is the greatest going right now. In his prime, maybe even hasn't even reached his prime. Will Ospreay is that good, because we can't tell. That doesn't mean that we're never going to see him in New Japan Pro Wrestling again. Of course, he's competing at Battle in the Valley, already confirmed, which is going to be coming up just a week after Wrestle Kingdom in San Jose, California in the U.S. So, you know, Will Ospreay is definitely staying around post Wrestle Kingdom. It just might be on a bit more of a limited basis. But yeah, not having Will Ospreay full time in New Japan Pro Wrestling is going to feel like a bit of a blow. And this is one of those moments where you think to yourself, thank God the Noge Dojo is as full as it is right now, because having these younger stars that we know, okay, they may not be there yet, they may not be there right now, but the Shoma Katos and Katsuya Morishimas of the world are going to develop, and they're going to become big enough to one day fill those shoes of an Ospreay. But if we're talking about people that are currently not young lions, but they might be younger stars in the company that I think can one day reach that height level, I think that Ospreay being known as the aerial assassin makes me want to go the direction of thinking more of a high impact athletic style of competitor. And who better to think of than the man who put up a heavy fight against Tomohiro Ishii at Korakuen Hall, the man that Will Ospreay personally recruited into United Empire, into New Japan Pro Wrestling, than Callum Newman. And I know Callum Newman's 21 years old, but Will Ospreay was a young cat when he first stepped into New Japan Pro Wrestling too. And a lot of people doubted him. And a lot of people doubted his heart and his energy and his will to make it as a professional wrestler, not only in Japan, but in the world. And I'm seeing those same accusations being thrown at Callum Newman left and right now. And as unfair as I might find that, as someone who knows Callum and has talked to him at length about that heart and that passion that he does have, it is up to him to prove it in the ring. And that match he had with Ishii is the first step to doing so. I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow. I don't think it'll happen next week, but I think within years' time, if Newman stays at it with what he has been doing, I think that he is on track to be able to fill that Ospreay-shaped void in the New Japan Pro Wrestling sphere. But again, this doesn't mean this is the last that we see of Will Ospreay. He's obviously wanting to be involved in some capacity because he's competing for this new championship. And you said that he told New Japan that it's a good idea to create this title. He didn't just tell them, he demanded it. He said, and keep in mind the verbiage, he said, I want a new title, make me a new title. And yeah, that's a championship that he's going to have to earn, but he feels it is rightfully his because of what David Finlay did at Power Struggle, destroying the life work of Will Ospreay and Jon Moxley in front of their very eyes. And it's going to be an interesting one. It's going to be a really exciting one. I think a lot of people are underestimating David Finlay, which is interesting to see as the lone New Japan official representative in this matchup for this new championship being unveiled in a New Japan in a New Japan sanctioned environment. David Finlay, a lot of people might think is representing New Japan, but I don't think Finlay is representing anyone other than himself and the people that back him, that being the War Dogs, that being Bullet Club, that being Ghetto. And I don't think this is one of those matches where you should expect to see Finlay fighting valiantly for the sanctity of New Japan Pro Wrestling. That just isn't what we're going to be getting here. I do expect this to be the most aggressive performance in David Finlay's career thus far. Why do I think that? Because he is the only one who I'd argue has the most to lose. Will Ospreay is going to go to AEW and he's going to compete in AEW. Jon Moxley is a 3-time AEW World Champion, a former WWE champion. He's done a lot of things in professional wrestling. He's going to continue to go to AEW and compete next year's Continental Classic or whatever happens going forward. David Finlay is going to be left alone, and he's going to be left in New Japan Pro Wrestling to think that if Will Ospreay or Moxley took that global championship home with them, he's empty-handed. He has nothing. All of that build-up for the smashing of the titles at Power Struggle to everything that he's talked about not feeling like he has a home between Ireland and the United States and Japan, it was all for nothing. And David Finlay is a guy that works in finality. That's why he permanently destroyed that U.S. and U.K. heavyweight championship. So I think that if anyone has the most to gain and the most to lose, it is David Finlay. And I think that his career is the one that's going to be hurt the most by a loss in this matchup. Will Ospreay will move on. Jon Moxley will move on. That doesn't mean that this is just another matchup for either of those two men either. But David Finlay, man, I mean, how much more could you possibly see being on the line? I think this one has to go to Finlay, whether I like it or not.
Yeah, like any matchup at Wrestle Kingdom can be considered the biggest match of anyone's career, but you kind of just went over the resume of a Jon Moxley, the resume of a Will Ospreay. The guy in this matchup that this is the biggest match of his career for sure is David Finlay. Jay News, you have not been the biggest fan of David Finlay. I'm starting to think you have an issue with the Bullet Club. But who do you who do you have winning the global heavyweight championship?
Well, I mean, look, man, at the end of the day, it's a personal bias, right? it's tough to be a second-generation wrestler in professional wrestling.
Yeah.
Big shoes to fill for Mr. Finlay, no matter what he wants to think. And I've constantly said it tongue-in-cheek, jokingly, and things of that nature, but it's real at the same time. He does not do a service to his last name. And that is my personal opinion. That is my personal opinion. With that being said, to Walker's point, he does represent New Japan Pro Wrestling in this match. AEW signed Will Ospreay. AEW has Jon Moxley. New Japan Pro Wrestling needs a new gaijin to take over the mantle, if you will. I unfortunately have to say and stick to my prediction that I made 3 months ago at this point. David Finlay will win this match. Now, with that being said, and I know he doesn't have to prove a damn thing to me, but let me just say it from my perspective and my point of view. Brother, you better put on a hell of a goddamn fight. Because if this is one of those shenanigan-filled matches, no. Absolutely not. You will hear every slight bit of criticism come from me, beyond the fact that I don't think he should be the leader of the Bullet Club, beyond the fact that I don't feel he fills the Finlay name boots, beyond the fact that he's just another wrestler with a pair of tights who's not important. Beyond all that, he's got to do something to be able to convince not just me and a lot of other fans as well that he can carry the mantle that needs to be carried from a gaijin wrestler, because he doesn't feel at home in Ireland. He doesn't feel at home in the U.S. Boo-hoo-hoo. Do something about it. You know what I'm saying? Do something about it. So this is your opportunity to do something about it. Win clean, pin somebody, and then we'll go on from there.
I think that all of the criticisms that you just named are things that I've heard a lot of people talk about. Those are all the things that are always on the mind of David Finlay when he's competing. I think that all of those criticisms are exactly what, if he wins, and in his mind, when he wins the Global Heavyweight Championship at Wrestle Kingdom 18, those are going to be the criticisms that I see him addressing in those backstage comments in New Year Dash and going forward into the rest of January and into February of 2024. But I totally see every single side of where you're coming from. And I think that Finlay, to a degree, hears these things so much that it might be hard to not believe them about themselves. We're all human beings. We all know how easily insecurity creeps into the body and creeps into the mind. I think Finlay not only needs to win this matchup to shut down the haters, to shut down the people who disagree with his methodations and his morals, but also to quiet that insecure voice and to really build his own confidence back up, because David Finlay hasn't been the same since losing the Never Openweight Championship.
Yeah.
It
definitely has been like that, and it feels like David Finlay, especially his run in New Japan, has been about adversity and comparison. The adversity and comparison to his father. Then it was the comparison and the adversity to him being compared by the other Gaijin dojo boys in his class of Juice Robinson and Jay White. Now it's been in 2023, the adversity and comparison to him to the rest of the Bullet Club leaders. And like I feel for him, and I find myself always rooting for him because I do a podcast with this guy. It tells me all the flaws, and I'm just like, nah, I think that he has always stepped up in big time matchups, so I don't expect him to not step up in this match, and that's why I'm gonna go with David Finlay for the win.
All I have to say is that he better step up, and he better dig his heels in so deep into that dirt that people never forget the footprint he leaves on Wrestle Kingdom 18. That's all I gotta say.
I'm giving you the face like, man, he could have the 11-star matchup, and Jay News would still find
no.
flaw.
No. At the end of the day, I am fair. I am fair when it comes to things of this nature. I just haven't seen it yet. Once I see it and I feel it, I'll let it go.
But someone who's not letting something go, we have to talk about next, because this rivalry between Kazuchika Okada and Bryan Danielson, it seemed like it was just going to be a dream match at Forbidden Door, one and done and move on, but it has become something so much bigger because at Forbidden Door, it was Bryan Danielson who tapped out Kazuchika Okada at the height of Okada's arrogance when he was hating on all the kids in New Japan. It was Bryan Danielson who tapped him out. Not only tapped him out regularly, he tapped him out with one freaking arm because Bryan Danielson broke his arm at Forbidden Door. They then would meet again in a tag team match on the October 25th edition of AEW Dynamite, where Bryan Danielson and Claudio Castagnoli defeated Orange Cassidy and Okada. But once again, Bryan Danielson was injured in the matchup, breaking his orbital bone. And that led to, as Walker mentioned earlier, power struggle where Bryan Danielson was revealed, made the challenge for Okada at Wrestle Kingdom, saying an arm for an arm, an eye for an eye. Go out of your way to watch that brilliant interview that Bryan Danielson did with New Japan Pro Wrestling, where he talked even more about this matchup. This is the match I'm looking forward to the most because they had a great match at Forbidden Door with Bryan having a broken arm for the last 10 minutes of the match. So all I need is Bryan to not break anything, and I think we're going to get an even better matchup. Walker, what have you thought about the build to this matchup and all the words said by both men heading into this rematch?
Well, I can tell you one thing. I've loved being a part of it. If I can speak personally on it, Bryan Danielson is someone that I grew up watching. I grew up idolizing when it came to his in-ring work, and then being able to enjoy it much more and go back and watch the Ring of Honor tapes and go back and watch all he's done. I'm incredibly excited to be a part of this matchup, as the child in me is screaming like, yes, 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 yeah, you get the pun. Yeah. Bryan Danielson, you know, first time that we've seen him in New Japan Pro Wrestling since 2004. He was reigning as junior heavyweight tag team champion with Curryman. So that a bit of a different set of circumstance. We're talking raising the stakes. All right, Curryman hopefully is not going to be in the building. I'm going to try and keep him barred. But Okada, man, he is, as you said, he was in his F These Kids era. You know, Okada was going around saying this and that about anyone that's going to listen, because that's just the type of guy that he is. And to an extent, I think it can be an argument that he earned the right to say those things and maybe still has that same right. But Bryan Danielson feels otherwise. I think that Danielson does not see Okada, well, he sees Okada as someone that he respects, maybe not on the pedestal that everyone gives him credit for being. Kazuchika Okada, man, he's walking in, I'd argue, at very good health, much better than Bryan Danielson is. Talk about that arm injury that happened with Okada at Forbidden Door. You also have to focus, of course, on the orbital bone, the eye socket of Bryan Danielson. This isn't the first time Bryan Danielson competes in a matchup with an eye injury against Japanese talent. Harken back to Takeshi Morishima, Ring of Honor. It was in the middle of that match. I believe the retina disattached.
I was there. Manhattan Mayhem. Manhattan Mayhem, Hammerstein Ballroom. I was there in like the second row to watch Morishima almost break this man's eye.
Right. And, you know, Bryan Danielson ended up coming through in that match in the end, making it all the way till the end. And all due respect to Takeshi Morishima, a legend in his own right. But we're talking about Kazuchika Okada. We're talking about a dude who has won the IWGP Heavyweight Championship countless amount of times, the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, and he slipped up at Forbidden Door. And I don't think that's something that's still sat in terms of him wanting to admit it. I don't think we'll ever admit or hear Okada admit that he messed up underestimating Bryan Danielson, because I truly believe that is what happened. In this matchup, I think Okada is not underestimating Bryan Danielson. We saw the ending to Kazuchika Okada and Hiroshi Tanahashi taking on TMDK's Kosei Fujita and Zack Sabre Jr., where it ended in a very simplistic way with Okada rolling up and tying up and pinning Kosei Fujita for the victory, to send the message that, yes, Bryan, I am willing to go the ground game with you if that's what it takes, because a lot of people are expecting Bryan Danielson to take things technically in this matchup. And we obviously know that Okada can hit as hard as anyone else on the New Japan roster, and sometimes even more so. We know Danielson can do the exact same thing. One thing I want to focus on when it comes to this matchup is particular strategy that these two men are going to be taking. And I'd like to posturize and theorize with you gentlemen on what you might think that is. We obviously know about the one weak point on Bryan Danielson that is evident, and that of course is the eye socket. A lot of eye injuries when we're talking about the New Japan card, this and of course the main event with Tetsuya Naito. Bryan Danielson, man, he is a guy that is resilient, but his body's been through the ringer, and I think that he might have made a fatalistic mistake in deciding to compete in the C2, in the Continental Classic. That is a lot of time. We talked about Tama Tonga taking time out of the ring to try and prepare for competition against Shingo Takagi. I think that's, if I'm Bryan Danielson, and obviously I'm not, that might have been the strategy that I would have taken the time to heal up, recover from that eye injury, and come in as close to 100% as possible against Kazuchika Okada. And that's not something that Danielson did. Okada is well aware of that, and I think that's something that Okada is going to take the advantage of. And I guess I want to ask you, gentlemen, what you think the strategies are going to be coming in for Okada Danielson in this matchup. We know Okada can go technically with Danielson if he so chooses, or at least he's willing to do so. But Danielson says he's going to make sure that Okada never does the Rainmaker again. We're talking about a guy who says he's winding down his own career, and he wants to take someone down with him by the end of it. I think that these are unprecedented times we're living in. What are y'all's thoughts on Danielson and Okada?
This is like a perfect example of a dream match to me, because if there's two guys that have enriched or like risen, even rose my fandom of professional wrestling even more over the last decade, it's Bryan Danielson and Kazuchika Okada. These two guys are two perfect professional wrestlers. As far as like their strategy, I think with Okada, of course, there's the big focal point of the broken orbital bone, but you also have to think about the history of injuries for Bryan Danielson, and where Okada usually tries to finish people off with is the Rainmaker. Bryan has a history of concussion, so making your focus on the head area, whether it be the broken orbital bone, whether it be the neck and head, setting up for the Rainmaker, I think that's the best way for Okada to go about this matchup. With Bryan, you kind of got to go the same kind of route that got you the win last time and keep it on the ground. He is one of the greatest technical wrestlers of all time, and he has seen that not only he has success on the ground, but others have had success on the ground with Okada. Zack Sabre Jr. beat Okada in the UK after his IWGP Heavyweight Championship run by submission on the mat. So this is what Bryan has to kind of go out and just go straight to the mat every single time. But I 100% think that this is totally different from the Shingo Takagi thing of staying active in the ring. Shingo Takagi's in like tag team matches. He has breaks. He's not having 25-minute violent masterpieces with Eddie Kingston 8 days before he faces Okada in the Tokyo Dome. Bryan Danielson is a maniac. That's all I gotta say about that.
I think that to add on to that point about these 25-minute insane violent matches that Danielson had throughout the Continental Classic, if Danielson ends up defeating Kazuchika Okada, there is no excuse for Okada that he is capable of taking. Danielson willingly put himself through the ringer. He knew that the Continental Classic was going to be difficult. He knows he's studied the G1. He's watched every single G1 that there is. He knows just how detrimental to the body, to the mental, to the health of an athlete that the round robin style tournaments, whether they're tag team or whether they're singles, can be on the body. And still Danielson went in to do that. And now, is that overconfidence? Is that a guy that goes, well, I've already defeated you and I don't really know why we need to do this again, but let's do it anyway, and I'll just do the same thing I did last time. I think that, to your point of Okada, having the arm being the target for for Bryan Danielson. Reality is, I think Okada is going to be the most protective of his ground game because he knows Danielson has the ability to submit him. And that might mean that Danielson has to switch up his strategy. I really hope that both of these athletes going into this matchup have plans A, B, C, all the way to G if they have to, because they're probably going to have to go to those places, because every single time we've seen them go tit for tat, it has always been that back and forth nature. It's never been a true dominant streak throughout major parts of the matchup. These guys know each other very well, and I think Danielson Okada, if there's another toss-up match for me, this might have to be it.
I feel the same way. News, though, who do you got coming out with the W between Okada and Dragon?
Man, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
I get it.
The reason as to why I say that is because I watched that 25-minute match between Daniel Bryan and Eddie Kingston. And then I watched that, and then on the socials, I watched their post-match promos, right? And I say to myself, okay, this is real professional wrestling now, right? So with Daniel Bryan taking his beaten and battered body into Wrestle Kingdom 18, and him declaring that his goal in this match is to break Kazuchika Okada's right arm. I think that Bryan Danielson is going to inherit the Zack Sabre Jr. school of thought, 6 seconds or less, but still concentrate on the arm, right? So he'll go after certain body parts just to distract Kazuchika Okada for a little bit and go back to that arm. He's going to use beautiful violence and psychological warfare against Kazuchika Okada to get the win over Kazuchika Okada. But Kazuchika Okada never lost that man twice. And so at the end of the day, if we're talking Wrestle Kingdom, if we're talking New Japan, we're talking semi-main event Kazuchika Okada levels of things, we will see how do we call him? Dick Okada here, right? We're going to see him piss off Daniel Bryan. He'll smack him around a bit. He'll go after that arm. He'll go after that socket. He'll injure him in some other way during the match, be it his back or like SP3 was saying, go for the head, to try to get that emotional feel from the crowd. Oh my God, he's going to have another concussion. He's going to go for all that. There's going to be, I think their approaches are going to be similar in the fact that they're going to have this approach of psychological warfare against one another, but it's who is going to hold out the most, who is going to be able to withstand the other more is really going to be the story of this match. And I think it's going to be glorious and beautiful violence, and we're all just going to be better for it. But I think that the Rainmaker and that Rainmaker money is going to fall from the sky, and we're going to see Okada win this match. And Bryan Danielson, I think, in my estimation, I feel after he loses this match, will finally take some time off and just hang out at home for like about a month and then come back to AEW.
I hope so.
Well, we make that point, but keep in mind, Danielson said, this is most likely my last active year of competition. Okada's already taken 3 of those months out of that year. So if we're using our math correctly, 9 months left. I don't know if Danielson wants to waste just another one sitting at home when he knows he's only going to have 9 left in his career. It's so he chooses. But I completely see your point, and I completely agree with you. You said Okada's never lost to a man twice. I haven't seen contrary to that opinion. So
only one. Oh, Shingo Takagi.
It's all back to Shingo Takagi.
It all goes back to our boy Shingo Takagi.
Yes. I'm fired up now.
Like I said,
Takagi in this one 3-way. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. I've been wanting Shingo Dragon versus Dragon for a while. Shingo versus Bryan Danielson. Give me.
Oh
that.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go different, and I am gonna go with Bryan Danielson to pick up the victory in this one. Bryan Danielson is my favorite wrestler of all time. I think he's the greatest wrestler of all time. And seeing him in the Tokyo Dome, it's going to be an experience. And so much has happened since the last time he was in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Like, people have to understand, that was vanilla midget era Bryan Danielson. That was before he developed a personality and became a dickhead as a Ring of Honor world champion 2 years later. So a lot has transpired in the past 2 decades since he's been in a New Japan ring. I'm very much looking forward to this one, as I am looking forward to the final match for us to discuss, the main event of Wrestle Kingdom 18 for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. Is going to be SANADA defending against the winner of the G1 Climax 33 tournament and the leader of Los Ingobernables de Japón, Tetsuya Naito. All of this story dates back, 7 years since SANADA decided to come into New Japan and join up with Los Ingobernables de Japón, but it really kind of took a turn earlier this year in the New Japan Cup when these two men went one-on-one in the tournament, and SANADA pulled off the upset over Naito and then made the choice to amicably leave LIJ and join up with just 5 guys, with Taichi and the gang, and become basically a leader of that group, going on to win the New Japan Cup, win the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship by defeating Kazuchika Okada at Sakura Genesis, and he has gone on to become the longest reigning IWGP World Heavyweight Champion of all time, beating the likes of Hiromu Takahashi, Yota Tsuji, Evil, among others. Meanwhile, Tetsuya Naito had his renaissance this year as he went into the G1 Climax 33 tournament and got pretty much knocked the hell out in the semifinals with Will Ospreay, and then seemingly comes back a day later, has a 5-star matchup, beating Okada in the G1 final, and it sets up a battle of former LIJ members. But all of that sounds very intriguing, very interesting. All of that was before the month of November. And you kind of brought it up earlier, Walker, that there has been a lot of talk among the New Japan Pro Wrestling community, whether it be the fan base or whatnot, about the promotion for this matchup. And this matchup not feeling exactly as big as past Wrestle Kingdom matchups, or not as big as some of the other matchups on the card. And a lot of that has been kind of finger pointing at SANADA and his way of promoting this matchup. So what have you thought about the build in the last 2 months heading into the Tokyo Dome event? And what have you thought overall about SANADA as champion, as despite him being the record-breaking, longest-reigning IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, there's been a lot of criticism and a lot of polarizing conversation about his run so far?
You know, the reality is there is nothing certain about anything I'm about to say because we haven't heard it come from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And I'm not talking about Masked Horse. SANADA, man, he has not had much to say about the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship match with Tetsuya Naito. That much is clear. And that leaves us only to theorize as to why. And a lot of those theories that I can come up with, and a lot of the ones that I've heard people online utilize to their arguments or for the sake of conversation, don't spell good things for SANADA. I've seen some people thinking that SANADA doesn't want to talk about the main event, not because he's forgotten that it's happening, but because he's afraid that if he loses, there's going to be a packed house in the Tokyo Dome there to witness it. And they're never going to forget it. And he will never have to forget that. SANADA, man, he's a very interesting cat. What can I tell you? The reign speaks to itself. Longest reigning IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, like you said. But you talk about the story lasting, 7 years or so. Reality is it goes back about 18. It goes back to the tryout, the Noge Dojo, New Japan Pro Wrestling opening their doors and saying, we're trying out those of you that wish to come. Tetsuya Naito, incredibly impressive. SANADA was not. SANADA had nothing to say then. SANADA has nothing to say now, right? There's an overlap between that version of SANADA in what we see now. I truly believe we're seeing SANADA now that he's face-to-face with the man who is leading LIJ, or is leading LIJ, and was when SANADA was inside it as well. He's reverting back to that LIJ style SANADA, where he wasn't the most vocal person then. We saw bits and pieces of SANADA coming out of his shell, winning, tournaments, winning the World Heavyweight Championship, forming Just Five Guys. We were seeing someone that I feel we were proud to have represent us as champion. And now we have a man who isn't even willing to address us as champion. And I think that is where the controversy lies for this matchup. Now, on paper, looking at it, we talk about the 18 years of history. We know this match is going to be good. There's no doubt about that, because we know that SANADA can compete at that level. There's a reason he is the historically long-reigning IWGP World Heavyweight Champion that he is. We know that Tetsuya Naito can deliver in the main events of Tokyo Domes. Oh, boy, do we know that. We've seen it. We've seen it time in and time out. An aspect of this that I want to look at on the side of Tetsuya Naito, we've discussed the ocular surgery in the past that Tetsuya Naito was only capable of having 3 times. It's the corrective vision surgery that has still allowed him to compete as long as he has. He has had that surgery for the final time. It's the same sort of issue. If it's not the exact same, there was a similar one that ended up taking a Milano Collection AT out of in-ring competition. And Tetsuya Naito has had that final surgery. This would not shock me, gentlemen, if this was the final Wrestle Kingdom for Tetsuya Naito in his career. And if it's not the final one, it may be close to the last. I'm starting to understand where the frustration's coming from on the side of Tetsuya Naito, knowing that this could be his last Wrestle Kingdom, his last main event in the Tokyo Dome, and the last opportunity he has to challenge for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship in his illustrious career. And SANADA, the other half of the playing field, doesn't even want to promote it, doesn't even want to talk about it. That's disrespectful to a man like Tetsuya Naito, who is a former heavyweight champion, intercontinental champion, G1 Climax winner, etc. You could run down the resume for days. All this being said, Naito, I think things are starting to wind down for him, and this might be one of the final things that we get to see out of Naito when it comes from a Wrestle Kingdom perspective. I think that SANADA is well aware of that. There's some mental manipulation that SANADA's doing, whether it is endearing himself to fans or not, is to be discussed, of course. But you think it didn't frustrate Naito that SANADA would rather talk about Doki's birthday at the end of the Korakuen event than talk about his distaste for Naito? SANADA has gone on to call Naito a showman, believes that there is a pandering aspect to LIJ, said that he felt that way while he was in LIJ. Doki acknowledged it in some backstage comments as well at a previous event. And I think that there's something to be said about that for Tetsuya Naito. SANADA is the polar opposite of that. We saw him embodying that Naito-like ability at certain points of his reign, but he's the polar opposite, that true to his core. And for SANADA, point blank, we're talking all these little details that play into this matchup, but what it's truly about is the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship and what it represents for both men. For Tetsuya Naito, it's about that roll call. It's about that roll call he never got to complete because Kenta had to rear an ugly head, and I hope that Kenta's not around for if we do see Naito walk away with the victory at Wrestle Kingdom 18. For SANADA, it is about a lot of different things, but I think SANADA sees this championship as representative of adoration and fanfare, something that he hasn't had 100% of throughout this reign. Sure, the people like SANADA, I really believe they do, but is he the people's champion? I don't entirely feel I'm convinced on that. And I think that SANADA feels this is his time to win people over, even if he's actively been pushing some people away. So it's been an interesting strategy for SANADA, but point blank, he feels that it is something that needs to be settled in the ring, that no one's going to remember the build, but they're going to remember the results. He wants that result to lie in his favor. We've talked all the exposition that we've needed to. Gentlemen, SANADA, Naito, I'm incredibly curious to hear where your minds are for this one.
Well, I'm going to start with the #1 president of the SANADA fan club here, Jay News. who's been debating with me about Sanada's title reign pretty much the entirety of the reign. What do you think going into this big matchup, Wrestle Kingdom main event, Sanada versus Naito?
The last time we spoke about this, I completely capitulated and I said this reign has not been what Sanada fans were expecting. To Walker's point, his inability to promote this match has not only been a slap in the face of Tetsuya Naito, but it's a slap in the face to the fan base that has somewhat been on his side this whole time. They wanted Sanada to go solo. They wanted Sanada to be in the main event picture. Sanada giving us the gifts all the time at the end of the shows with the lights on and everything else in between. But where has this gone? Where are we now? We're in a place where people just either they don't care or it's like, can we just get this over with? And for me, it's one of those things where one of two things has to happen. Either we have Tetsuya Naito, and I've said this from the jump, once Naito won the G1, Naito needs to finish the story. There's so many stories that need to be finished in professional wrestling nowadays, Walker, and Naito has another story that needs to be finished. So I say Naito wins. That is my prediction. It is what it is. Yes, I am the president of the Sanada fan club, and I will land on Sanada right now for this one thing.
There you go.
Brother, you need to be able to get these people on your side. You have to change what it is that you've been doing. You claim that Tetsuya Naito is a showman, and to Walker's point, he's the antithesis of that. But one of his trainers was the ultimate showman, considered one of the greatest Japanese wrestlers of all time. He wanted to be Keiji Muto, aka the Great Muta, stealing the moves, everything else in between. He's got the gear, right? He just doesn't have the personality as of yet, or at least shown it, right? He's got to show it. He's got to show us. The title reign is there. Longest reigning IWGP World Heavyweight Champion of all time. Now it's time for you to pick up that ball and say, hey, Sanada's the superstar that you guys have been waiting for. Show that up against Tetsuya Naito, and this has to be his greatest match of all time. It has to be. There isn't anything around. If he falls short of the match being great, he failed us all. Regardless of personality or not. This match has to be great. But he has to show the emotion. He has to come out with the glitz and the glam. He has to show up Naito at Wrestle Kingdom 18. That's what I want to see. Now, if we don't get that, fine. But like I said, this match has to be great, and it has to be indicative of what Sanada might want to be perceived of him in the future. But for right now, it is time for Naito to finish the story. It is time for Naito to make that roll call. Like I told Sid, in my deluded head, I feel like if Sanada loses, he stays in the ring and he gets one final roll call with Elijah. In my deluded head, I know it won't happen, but at the end of the day, in my deluded head, he'll be there for it. But because
Jack, I gotta ask you. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but you brought up a point that I find incredibly interesting. You talked about a lack of showcase of personality in recent days for Sanada. Do you think that that's something that might be there's fear for Sanada to showcase that authentic personality out of a fear of rejection? We haven't always seen people take kindly to people that are always themselves. There are different times where we have seen insecurity play a factor into that, and human nature is just a part of professional wrestling as the actual action is, right? So do you think that there is a side of Sanada that says, if I keep this shell around myself, sure, people are going to make judgments, but those judgments are not going to be about who I truly am as a person? And if he were to lift that shell up, that there's potential that rejection he faces could cripple him.
That's a good point.
That is an interesting point, Walker. And I'll say this: I always go back to who he learned from and how he came up. A lot of the people who helped train him at a certain point in their careers, and excuse my language, but they stopped giving a fuck. They really did. So at the end of the day, this is his make no mistake. This is his make or break moment. This is his make or break. There's just no way around it. So either he shows us who the real SANADA is, or we continue to see the dog-loving, dressed to the nines, good-looking Japanese man that we've seen this entire year. But there has to be more that the people are going to want from SANADA. And I feel that there is more, but will we get more is really the question at the end of the day. And I want to mention one thing. I think that the poster that New Japan Pro Wrestling released of the main event today on social media was top notch A1. that was a cool sight to see. So that was a cool bit of marketing and press for the match. But Walker said it best. SANADA hasn't really spoken about it. I feel like there's just this case of not jealousy, envy of who Tetsuya Naito has been. And
I've always felt like SANADA wants to be loved like Naito, or wants to be loved like Hiromu. That's why I thought it was very appropriate Hiromu was his first challenger as champion. To give Walker some insight on where I've stood throughout this SANADA title reign, I was 100% with SANADA beating Okada at Sakura Genesis. But as soon as Yota Tsuji showed up, I was like, yeah, he's a lot more interesting. You should put the title on him. So ever since Dominion, where Tsuji lost, I've been on this whole bandwagon of, yeah, this SANADA reign, I think, is going on too long. And I think more and more people are going to realize that maybe we should have put it on Tsuji. So hearing a lot of fans kind of saying, oh, now I'm not liking it or not, kind of felt like validation in a way. But I have liked a lot of what SANADA has done. I absolutely adored the whole evolution and character change he developed in the New Japan Cup. Loved this matchup with Okada. Absolutely loved this matchup with Hiromu. Enjoyed the matchup with Yota Tsuji. It just seems like the G1 climax is where things kind of change. And I always go back. Another stance I've always stood on is that if you swap SANADA and Okada blocks, because Okada needed to be in the block with all the kids, and SANADA needed to be in a block where he could potentially beat people like Taichi and Ospreay, I think both guys, the storyline of Okada F the kids and SANADA's title reign would be in a lot better position. As far as this build up and this, I just expected a little bit more. And what I've been kind of begging and wanting from SANADA is any type of emotion. Right. Because his feud right after the G1 was with a man who betrayed him, joins the Bullet Club. You feuded with him for the better part of a year. Then he comes back into your life after you went undefeated in the G1 in your block. He eliminates you at the first hurdle of the playoff and then steals your title, which you're having issues being looked at as a credible champion. And it just felt like SANADA didn't care. It just felt like I understand that he's a cool, kind of nonchalant guy, but I just wanted more fire from him. And I wanted that again in this Naito feud. All of that was saying, I know this match is going to be spectacular because these two guys are two great professional wrestlers. Naito, it just seems like it's time to get that roll call. It feels like we have been on this journey with Naito at Wrestle Kingdom ever since 2018. Ever since he won the G1 Climax 27 and faced Okada, where everyone and their mama, including me, wanted Naito to win, and he lost. And we've been on this journey of, we thought it was completed in 2020, and then Kenta ruined the roll call, and now we're back here 3 years later. We need Naito to win this one to finally finish the story.
I think there's a lot of credibility to every point that you just made, all the way back to SANADA in New Japan Cup, winning the World Championship. Your thoughts on Yota Tsuji? I understand everything there. Reality is, I think Yota Tsuji's time will come. I think SANADA's time is now, and we're seeing these overlaps come between how you might have felt and the world might have felt that SANADA should have shown a little bit more fire when Evil took his World Heavyweight Championship that he didn't rightfully own and released a T-shirt about it. I believe the same thing is being felt about this matchup with Tetsuya Naito. Obviously, we talked about that just now. So we're seeing these consistencies with SANADA. At least we know SANADA's consistent. We've seen these consistencies with SANADA. So we know that it's not a slight directly at Naito. But there is a part of me that thinks he wants to be everything that Naito isn't, yet wants to have everything that Naito has in terms of that fanfare and everything beyond. And I just don't know if SANADA can have his cake and eat it too. And obviously, you know, there are greater New Japan Pro Wrestling historians and Japanese wrestling historians than I, but a competitor that is going about things the way that SANADA is, going down with the likes of a Okada, Naito, Tanahashi in the greatest of all time category. I just don't know how likely it is that that happens. I think that if SANADA needs to be focused on anything, he has this historic reign he's on right now. And you want people to talk about that in good favor. You want people to talk about your crowning achievements. This is the greatest thing SANADA has ever done in his professional career. This match is going to be a culmination of that, cherry on top. If he can manage to get the victory, you want people to talk about it positively. But to start with that, you're going to have to speak up first. And I'm not sure if it's going to take SANADA winning to finally speak up. Will it be too late if that is the case? And if SANADA loses, is that when we're going to begin to hear from him? Is that where we might see a corner turned with SANADA? I'm just not certain. And I wish I had more answers for you and in the public on this, because, you know, I like to be a guy with affirmations and answers on everything, but SANADA hasn't given us any. And that leads to a lot more mystique and mystery going into the main event. This is why this matchup is must watch. SANADA might not be talking about it. Sure, I understand that. But the result becomes much more interesting because SANADA has not talked about it. Because how does SANADA evolve going forward, whether he retains the championship or not? These are the questions that I'm asking. These are the questions that I'm leaving up to everyone viewing the show, tuning into Wrestle Kingdom 18 on January 4th, and I'm excited about it. I'm fired up.
I am very excited for Wrestle Kingdom, and even more excited that we had Walker Stewart to talk about this card. I want to thank you so much for taking the time out. Going to go in depth about your career, go in depth about your history with wrestling, history as a broadcaster, and going in depth about the New Japan Pro Wrestling Wrestle Kingdom 18 card. Walker Stewart, if you're not supporting Walker Stewart, what are you doing? Because this man is just one of the gems, the new gems of all things professional wrestling. Because we got to learn your knowledge, got to learn your passion, and thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys inviting me on. I've done a lot of interviews and podcasts, and I have another one in 30 minutes, and it'll be my 6th one of the day. And I'm working through the media tour because I want people to tune into Wrestle Kingdom 18, and it's not for a numbers thing. It's not because I want to take credit for it. It's not anything like that. It's because when I believe in something, I'm not going to shut the hell up about it until it's over with. I believe in New Japan Pro Wrestling, so you're going to be hearing my voice a lot going forward, both on broadcast and off broadcast, because I believe in the message and the style and the atmosphere that New Japan purports, and it makes me feel like the way people would describe wrestling shows in the 70s and 80s of in the United States, of packed houses and, you know, all these things that I grew up on the independents hearing, oh, it used to be like this. We used to be drawing such and such over in this town and blah, blah, blah. And we're not anymore. I feel like we're getting back to that. I'm in a space where I get to enjoy things of a high magnitude. I'm pumped for Wrestle Kingdom 18. January 4th. And gentlemen, I mean, let's be honest here. January 4th is going to be great, but January 5th is where everyone's eyes also need to end up, because sure, we're going to be seeing the Final Four meet for the KOPW championship match that's going to happen to kick off 2024. But we've seen New Year Dash in past encounters be pivotal pivotal in setting the tone for the year. And I think I'm about as fired up for that one as I am for Wrestle Kingdom 18, but obviously we got to get through one to get to the other. So I appreciate you guys once again inviting me onto the podcast, letting me talk about something I'm passionate about, and I hope to be back on. I enjoyed chatting with y'all. So
100%.
100%, definitely, man. This is my first go around doing an interview, Walker, at all. I've just been the mouthpiece on the podcast, always with my controversial takes or over the top takes with certain things or whatever. But it's always cool to have a conversation with somebody who's as passionate about New Japan Pro Wrestling as I am, and is SP3, my tag team partner. I say me and SP3 are the best tag team in the business when we talk about podcasting, and that's the way we're gonna slice that apple. But to say that Wrestle Kingdom 18, I am now better prepared. I am now in a better mood due to the fact that we shared this podcast and interview with you, Walker. Thank you for doing something for me that I have been trying to do for the last 30 years of my life, and that is push the New Japan agenda. And ladies and gentlemen, just understand, it's not just AEW, it's not just WWE, it's not just whatever else you might see. New Japan Pro Wrestling is one of the best, if not the best, wrestling promotion out there in the world. Catch it on streaming, NewJapanWorld.com. The app is good. The feeds are good. You hear the voice of New Japan Pro Wrestling in English commentary here with us today. That is Walker Stewart. Ladies and gentlemen, this man is 21 years old. You'll be seeing him around for a long period of time.
So, Walker,
I think it was Kevin that told me I was going to get to call the 100th anniversary of New Japan Pro Wrestling if I stick around enough. So
that's so true.
Yeah.
You're only 21, sir. You're making me feel very old right now. But Walker, please let the people know where they can follow you on social media, and of course, get all the plugs in for everything New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Of course, follow New Japan Pro Wrestling on Twitter and a lot of social media at NJPW Global. If you want to look at the English feed at NJPW 1972 on the Japanese side of things on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. You can follow me on all social media at Velvet Voice WS. I stream live on twitch.tv. Going to be doing some video game stuff and stuff like that coming forward when I get into less busy seasons or I get days off on different tours. I know I have some stuff planned for Fantastica Mania where I'm going to get some of the boys in doing some stuff in the hotel room, so I'm excited about that. But I'm also going to be going live directly after Wrestle Kingdom 18 when I'm in my hotel room coming down from the high of what is going to be the biggest night in sports in Japan, January 4th. And I'm actually going to be talking all about the card, what went down, preview New Year Dash, going in, get 1 hour of sleep, and get right back in and go for it one more time. So that's twitch.tv/Velvet Voice WS, Velvet Voice WS on all social media. I hope you all tune in January 4th, 2024, bell time 16:30. That's a 4:30 Japanese Standard Time. Translate that to whatever time zone that you're in. I'm fired up. I can't wait for it. Thank you, gentlemen, for having me on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Walker, for an interview, for our preview of Wrestle Kingdom 18. Me and Jay News will be, of course, back to talk all about the card on that week as well. So be on the lookout for that. Be on the lookout for our watch along for Wrestle Kingdom as well. But that was Walker Stewart. That is Jay News. This has been both True Heels BTR Between the Ropes with Walker Stewart, as well as our NJPW Wrestle Kingdom 18 preview with Walker Stewart. That's Jay News. I'm SP3, and we are signing off until next time.